So Phoebe was running a Stranger Things experience at a place called the Armory, which we knew we couldn't pass up because we really liked the show. This was when part 1 of season 4 had just been released and we were really excited about it. The program was in 2 parts, so the first part was like an immersive experience, and the second bit was what they called the mixtape, which had like a lot of stores and sets from the show. Unfortunately, we couldn't record anything in that first part of the experience, but that's understandable. It was definitely worth the money. You could tell they put in a lot of thought and effort into it. The production value was pretty high. There were like full sets and live actors and cool special effects. It was pretty amazing. We saw a few kids there too, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like a dark show. There was like a lot of crude language, and at one point we were like instructed to flip the bird. Anyway, after this first bit we could spend as long as we wanted in the mixtape, which felt like being in Starcourt Mall. There were no spoilers for season 4, the only thing they had there was pretty much the Surfer Boy pizza and Hellfire Club merch. So if you're not caught up on the show, you're totally safe. We ate and we drank, but there were also a few cool activities you could do in this part besides shopping and eating. So there were multiple sets specifically for photo ops with very helpful attendees, and it was really endearing to see Joyce's Christmas lights from season 1. There were also role players that were roaming around in characters from Hawkins, and they started conversations with us, which was awesome. So even though none of the characters were from the show, it was cool how they all had their own backstories and they had like their own lives in Hawkins. We would talk to one character who would tell us to talk to another character, who would tell us to talk to another character. So it felt like we were doing a chain quest in like a video game, and pretty soon we ended up talking to most of the characters and then telling them about our weird experience at the Hawkins lab. There was also some sort of like QR scavenger hunt thing, but sadly my phone couldn't read them properly, so I missed out on that. I bought a shirt and this set of Hellfire Club dice for the next time I play D&D. I'm so happy we went. I have no idea if it's still running by the time this video is out, but like, if it comes to your city and you're a big fan of Stranger Things, I highly recommend going. I love the aquarium. I think I love it more than the zoo because it is so much more prettier. It is so beautiful. I love seeing all of the fish and the coral and the way that the light kind of like refracts through the water and stuff. It's just really gorgeous. I don't have too much to say about this. I mean, it's an aquarium, a really pretty aquarium. Look at all these fish and sea creatures. The tunnels are always my favorite bit every time I visit an aquarium, and these ones did not disappoint. It's just so magical under here. Like, we spent ages just watching and taking videos of the sharks and the fish and the eels and whatever else was inside them. We were also really excited to see jellyfish because jellyfish just look so extraordinary. I was kind of concerned though because we saw some jellyfish that were like all tangled up together, and I don't know, does that hurt them? Does it hurt them? I don't know. There was this cute area where you could touch baby sharks and raise in like this little pool. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do that, but I did touch an anemone. So yeah, we saw sharks, we saw big fish, we saw little fish, we saw jellyfish. One thing we did not see, unfortunately, was an octopus. We kind of stood there in front of the tank and tried to look for it, but we couldn't see it. And that made me a little bit sad, but it was okay because I got to see sea otters for the first time. And I was so lucky to get this cute clip on camera. They were so active and zoomy, and we saw one shake its butt while it was pooping, which was pretty funny. Afterwards, we strolled down to Fisherman's Wharf. There were some street market stalls. We visited this old style arcade, which was pretty cool, but we didn't spend too long in here because we were pretty hungry. And I tried In-N-Out for the first time. I love it. I want to go get another one. Please open up in Australia for when I come back. Then we watched the sunset at a beach, and it was a really splendid, peaceful day. The Palace of Fine Arts was one of the places I definitely knew I wanted to visit when I was looking at things to do in San Francisco. Being here made me feel like I was in a European country or something. I felt so small here because the structures were so large and the gardens and trees were really beautiful. We saw like 4 or 5 photo shoots while we were here, which is not surprising at all. I can only imagine how peaceful and lovely this place would be in the quiet of the early morning, because when we came there were just so many people, understandably. We took a lot of photos and just overall appreciated the beauty of this place. If you're ever in San Francisco, you should definitely go if you like pretty things. It's also free. So after the Palace of Fine Arts, we did a hike on the same day, but I'm separating it as I feel like it was its own adventure. We walked to the Presidio area after visiting the palace and decided to do one of the walking trails there. We went through some eerily quiet neighborhoods until we found a starting point for the trail we wanted to go on, which was called the Ecology Trail. And the initial plan was to follow the hike partway and then switch to another one, but we missed the turning point and we ended up doing the whole trail, but it was fine. I was so glad to be back in nature again, away from the city. It was really quiet here and I really missed being like amongst trees and in the forest. Being able to see the variety of environments and plants just on the one trail, from like lush forests to these drier areas, it was really refreshing. The endpoint also offered some really beautiful views. I was obsessed with these houses for some reason, just like I really like this scene with the fog and the trees. Like, can I just live there? We booked Alcatraz a month in advance because it was so hard to find any opening dates close to when we first wanted to go. So Alcatraz is known for being like a high security prison on an island that was hard to escape. It is no longer in use. You've probably heard of it. We decided to book the evening tour in hopes that it would be dark so we could get those spooky, haunted vibes, but when we boarded the ferry to get there, it was still really bright and it didn't actually get dark until we had to leave the island, which was a bit unfortunate. The ferry ride was nice. When we landed, we were escorted up to the prison building in like a huge group by a tour guide. We had to climb a really big hill and then we were given audio tours so we could wander around inside the prison building by ourselves at our own pace. I've never visited a prison before, so it was interesting to see how the inmates lived here and all about the famous prisoners who were housed there. Not that I can remember too much about it. Anyway, you can Google it if you want. There was an interesting story about a group of inmates escaping and creating like fake body doubles or fake heads to place in their beds. That one stayed with me a little because it was a bit creepy. The island itself is actually quite pretty. There were a lot of seagulls there and they have maintained the gardens and plants really well. So the walk up to the prison was actually quite nice and it offered some really beautiful views at sunset. So with the first part of my trip coming to an end, I really wanted to go and see more natural sights in San Francisco. So we decided to head over to the Golden Gate Park and it was huge. We rented bikes because, well, bike riding is fun and more efficient than walking. And I love bike riding when it's not too hilly. The park itself is like 3 miles long, and there are so many separate areas inside it that it was impossible to explore the whole thing in a day. We didn't even get a chance to go into the museums or the botanical gardens, so instead we saw a few of the other gardens. We saw a rose garden. There was a lot of art, sculptures, music. We went into a cafe. There were also some animals which were really cute, but most of the time we were just zooming around on our bikes. Our butts really hurt afterwards, but it was totally worth it.